Before I can start this video, I need to make one thing clear. Yes, I know everyone calls them Dr. Eggman and Dr. Eggman Nega, but I never liked that name, Eggman. I don't like it at all. I grew up with Dr. Robotnik, and I'm not going to call him Dr. Eggman. The original Dr. Robotnik will be called Dr. Robotnik, and I'll continue to refer to Nega as Eggman Nega to keep the confusion down. If this is a problem for you, suck it up or go to another video because I'm not budging on this. Okay, everyone that doesn't care still here? Everyone good? Good. Now we can get this show on the road. In a lot of series, there are typical tropes that seem to persist. Tropes meaning storytelling cliches or niches that seem to pop up in countless genres. Take the shonen manga/anime for example. There's the trope that the main character will continue to grow in power constantly through the story, even if their power increase feels like an ass pull. There's the trope of having an evil organization being confronted and fought one by one. There's the trope that the protagonist eats an insanely large amount of food. Basically, tropes exist in all genres in some way or another. One common trope is the idea of an antagonist that perfectly captures the darkest parts of another character. Characters that fall into this role, just to name a few, are Thailog from Gargoyles, Mewtwo from Pokemon, Mad Jack from Samurai Jack, Kane from the Spider-Man comics, and the Riku replica from Kingdom Hearts. All of these characters challenge the people they meet in interesting yet similar ways. They offer something unique that not many other characters can to the story, and make for some compelling people overall. And sure, this trope has been done to death and can be tiring to see once more, but if a character is done right, they can put their own spin on the evil twin trope and make the once tired idea feel fresh. And Dr. Eggman Nega is not quite like this. Well, at first glance he isn't. Now, if you're aware of any of those series I just mentioned, you'll realize that those characters are clones in some way of other characters in their series. And yes, this was done on purpose. I'm going to say this and clarify it later, so for right now, just stick with me, alright? I believe Dr. Eggman Nega should be, / is already, the clone of Dr. Robotnik. Not a descendant, not an alternate universe doppelganger, a clone. This idea, when handled correctly, can fix nearly every problem that the character has. This one thing can make him into a multifaceted, compelling, and fantastic villain, and I think there's a lot of evidence pointing towards this conclusion. So let's look at his story, his character arc, his personality, his design, and follow me on my journey to peel back the layers of this character. And hopefully, I can convince you to think of him in a better light. Or maybe just hate him less. But before I get into it, I need to warn you. This video is going to get dark. Not dark in an edgy or cringy way, but in a for real disturbing and demented way. I'm not joking, I'm not trying to bait you into watching this series just so you can reply with a "that wasn't so dark." I'm gonna take you guys on a dark ride. So if you aren't prepared for it, turn back now. But if you're ready and willing to dive into darkness, let's do this. Dr. Eggman Nega is from the distant future of the current timeline. He's the descendant of the original Dr. Robotnik, and he happens to be Silver's archenemy. It isn't specified how or why, but Eggman Nega ends up going to Blaze's world and became her archenemy for a while. Long enough to know the intimate details of her world and make various plans to steal the royal family's jeweled scepter and soul emeralds. It's worth noting that Eggman Nega has managed to figure out how the soul emeralds work and Blaze hasn't. Eggman Nega obviously has spent less time in her world than her. and yet he figured out things about her own objects of destiny and birthright that she hasn't already. Even though the only thing Blaze has had in her life was her duty to protect the Soul Emeralds, this guy from another world figures out the gems completely. That's really impressive when you think about it. Another thing to take away from this is the fact that Eggman Nega lies about it. He says in this game he is the alternate dimension counterpart of the original Dr. Robotnik, doppelganger for short. Him lying is going to be a habit that persists in all of his game appearances, and the reason behind this lie is never said outright, but we'll use our subtext powers to decipher the most logical explanation for this deception. But later. So the events of Sonic Rush come into motion from Dr. Robotnik meeting Dr. Eggman Nega. Let's not forget, Eggman Nega hates Robotnik. He's using him to get what he wants, the Soul Emeralds and the Chaos Emeralds, while also splitting the hero's attention on him. Dr. Robotnik has always been a means to an end for Eggman Nega, not the other way around. Then, the Rush plot finally begins. During the game, he's the co-main antagonist along with his doppelganger. His first appearance in the game is at the end of Sonic's run through Water Palace Zone, where the scene plays out like this. I like this scene, in that it tries to accomplish the creepiness of Nega, distinguishing him from Dr. Robotnik in Sonic's eyes. His manner of speech has been repeatedly said to be more polite than Dr. Robotnik's, and his overall composure is eerie. I like this introduction, but I believe it could have been done a little better. For example, have Eggman Nega remain quiet longer. Let Sonic try to engage in witty banter like usual, but Eggman Nega remains silent through all of the talking. This is the easiest way to make the scene uncomfortable, considering we have the previous scene with Sonic and Dr. Robotnik giving us a template for how the pre-boss battle scene should go. So adding this quiet second party makes it uncomfortable and jarring. And having Sonic notice this shift in tone would be an excellent way to hammer down that feeling of uneasiness. Next, the words he does speak aren't intimidating. I believe the writers were trying to make the scene feel similar to Xemnas' introduction from Kingdom Hearts.
Who are you?
I am Sam?
What's that supposed to mean?
The difference between the two scenes, other than the fact that Xemnas has these ridiculously terrifying powers, shaky captions for dialogue in contrast to voice acting, a mysterious design that gives nothing away of his origins, fantastic sound design and shot composition, other than all of that, the difference between the scenes is the weight his words have, based on both the actual words and phrases used and the events happening behind the scenes, which won't be revealed until way later in the story. Every single thing he says has massive foreshadowing and implications toward the future. And not just that, but the way in which he says all of this is in a foreboding, almost riddle-like speech pattern. It's cryptic and scary. The writers obviously tried to capture this same feeling in this scene, but his lines aren't well written enough to get these same feelings from the player. To make the writing better, the subject should be changed from Nega's full name to something else. Have him focus on Sonic's character in this dialogue, similar to how Xemnas focused on Sora in their dialogue. He didn't say, "Ha ha ha, Ansem is a familiar name, but it is not quite my name. My name is much better than Ansem, foolish fool. My full name is Awesome, and I can't tell you it yet, but if I were to tell you my very different and original name, I would say my name is Xemnas, because it is my name, which is Xemnas. Mwahahaha." That's not creepy. That's typical Saturday morning cartoon bad guy talk. Instead of focusing on him, he focuses on Sora, and he only says one short line about his name. His focus is on antagonizing and confusing Sora. And that should be Eggman Nega's focus here. Maybe he could say something about Sonic's efforts being futile, alluding to the fact that no one in the future knows who he is, thus his struggling is for naught. If you don't like that, Eggman Nega could focus on the world, saying it's far brighter than what he remembers. Maybe mentioning how Sonic reminds him of Silver, but not calling Silver by name. Maybe you can recall that Sonic has the same look in his eyes that Silver does. Next, don't have him actually acknowledge what Sonic is saying. Xemnas appears and Sora asks who he is, but Xemnas doesn't say, "I am blah blah blah." He says something completely unrelated to the proposed question. This is also a way to throw the protagonist off, showing him that he isn't in control of the conversation, the villain is. Sonic's talking about defeating Eggman and saying he won't succeed, but how jarring would it be if Eggman Nega just sort of laughed and said something like this? And then boom, boss fight. Is it perfect? No. Is it better than what we got? I think so, yeah. We've got this impactful scene that clearly distinguishes Dr. Robotnik and Eggman Nega as completely separate entities, while making for some great tension. Because in the original cutscene, is there honestly any tension? Like, at all? Are you worried or confused when you watch it? No, of course not. It's just another Saturday morning cartoon bad guy introduction. But adding all of this can elevate it to something greater. And this doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out thing either. Xemnas' introduction is about 1 minute and 56 seconds, and that's with actual animation and staging and all that stuff. But let's move on. Sonic beats him a couple of times, but he doesn't appear in a cutscene again until the Blaze vs. Sonic fight. Before that, though, I need to mention the boss battles in Rush and the symbolism that they have. Dr. Robotnik and Eggman Nega have the same boss mechs. They have copies of the same robots, which supports the idea that he's a copy of Dr. Robotnik. Because if he wasn't, then the developers would have created different bosses for the same levels like they did in Shadow the Hedgehog. Depending on the missions you completed beforehand, a level could feature a GUN boss, or a Black Arms boss, or a Robotnik boss. So the fact that they chose to make the boss mechs the exact same means that they knew the whole time that he was a clone. Just throwing that out there. So okay, the next cutscene opens with both Sonic and Blaze confronting Eggman Nega and Dr. Robotnik at Deadline Zone. The scene plays out like this. So let's compare the dialogue between Sonic and Dr. Robotnik with Blaze and Eggman Nega's dialogue. Sonic appears and Dr. Robotnik does a classic "Sonic, what are you doing here?" type of thing. Blaze appears and Eggman Nega very calmly says, "Oh, Blaze, my dear." We've seen throughout the game that Blaze and Sonic are basically evenly matched in power and skill, which means if Blaze was Robotnik's archenemy, he would have used the same reaction that he gave to Sonic, a generally worried and uncomfortable reaction. But Eggman Nega retains his composure despite knowing how strong and skilled Blaze is, and having his life threatened by her. Again, this is eerie how calm he is in the face of danger, like he's still in control, which he is, honestly. Sonic is there and tries to control Blaze a bit, which makes her lash out and attack him. And when Eggman Nega says, "This world is entertaining, I think I'm gonna like it here," he seems to be alluding to the fact that he's not at all surprised at the outcome. It's safe to say that he planned this from the start of the scene, pitting Blaze and Sonic against each other, leaving him free to get away. Also, in the scene, Nega confirms my earlier suspicions as to who came up with this entire evil plot in the first place, which is clearly Eggman Nega, as Blaze deduces that he guided Robotnik to her world, and he responds, "It's best to get someone else to do the dirty work." Which means that his earlier statement, "I didn't expect to see you in this world," could also be a lie, seeing as he has been in communication with Robotnik, and he would have given Eggman Nega status updates about the condition of their plan. It just goes to show you how incredibly intelligent and manipulative he really is. Robotnik is being played throughout the entire game, and he doesn't even realize it. One more thing to mention as far as manipulation, the line, "I could care less what happens to our world," is number one, a good look into Nega's fractured psyche, and number two, completely out of left field. There's just no reason for him to say this. It feels shoehorned in there. But Blaze's reaction to it tells us why he said it. He said it to get her riled up enough to make Sonic try and check her, which would make her direct her rage at Sonic instead of Eggman Nega, allowing him the opportunity to escape. It's a nice touch to his sinister behavior. Blaze and Sonic fight while Nega gets away for a little bit, but Sonic finally follows him to the unknown final zone. They fight once more and Sonic is victorious, but then the last story begins, and Eggman Nega along with Dr. Robotnik go up to Blaze, now wielding all the Soul Emeralds, and begins to toy with her. Did you notice the words that Eggman Nega chose to speak and the words that Dr. Robotnik chose to speak? They do that weird twins finish each other's sentences thing, but I feel like there are a few choice lines that Eggman Nega chooses to say instead of Robotnik, and consequently chooses not to say to allow Robotnik to speak. The first phrase is when they bring up the magnetic properties of the Chaos and Soul Emeralds. Dr. Robotnik says this. And Eggman Nega says this. Magnets, as we all know, work on the opposites attract principle. A negative and a positive can come together, while two negatives can only repel each other. I think it's interesting that he says this, given the fact that he and Dr. Robotnik are essentially two negatives, meaning they can't truly come together and connect with each other. Eggman Nega hates Dr. Robotnik, and has been using him through the whole game to further his own goals. If they were to succeed, Eggman Nega would without a doubt pull the rug from under Dr. Robotnik and kill him once his usefulness had run out. And I think him choosing to say this line clues us in on his true antagonistic nature towards his doppelganger, and basically every other villain in the series. Next, there's this little part. Notice how he's the one to say what they're attempting to do could destroy the world, and Robotnik is the one that comes behind him and assures Blaze / the audience that they aren't trying to destroy the world, they just want the immense power. Very interesting how they snuck this in, because later in the series, Nega drops all pretense and openly states that he wishes to destroy the world, not rule it, which is the opposite of what Robotnik wants to do. Robotnik wants world domination, and Eggman Nega wants world destruction. Robotnik coming behind him and clarifying Nega's statement leads me to believe that Nega was going to let that be the end of the conversation, comfortable with the idea of world destruction. But Robotnik is not okay with that and feels the need to clarify, which shows that Robotnik himself is starting to question / get creeped out by Nega, further alienating Nega from everyone else in the series. Then the scene continues after Blaze is defeated by the twin geniuses. Here we see proof of the global destruction desires of Eggman Nega. He says that it should have created explosive results. An interesting choice of words, am I right? Not to mention that this was supposed to be the end of his plan. This moment, Blaze defeated, all the Soul Emeralds together in his possession, all the Chaos Emeralds together and present in the dimension. According to all of his research, this should have been the moment that both worlds started to crumble and die. But nothing is really happening and it doesn't make sense. In this moment, Eggman Nega, for the first time we've seen him, is worried and perplexed. He has always been cool, calm, and collected up to this point, but in this rare moment, he is left in an uncertain situation. He doesn't know what to do to get the results that he wants, and the understandable feeling of failure is setting in. Robotnik comes in and tells him it's because he has the Chaos Emeralds, that his true goal has yet to come to fruition. And without warning, this unexpected turn of events has Nega on edge, which makes Sonic's sudden appearance a somewhat frightening thing for him. He hadn't planned on seeing him again. The plan was supposed to end right when Blaze was defeated and the Soul Emeralds were in his possession. But no, things aren't going according to plan, all thanks to that one small miscalculation. We've got another case of the interesting lines given to and not given to Eggman Nega. When Eggman Nega says, yes, if you defeat him, the Soul and Chaos Emerald's powers will be. It's important to realize how he's saying what he's saying. He said, if you defeat him, not we. In fact, he doesn't say we until he needs it for manipulation purposes. And yes, Robotnik does say, I have the power of the Soul Emeralds. I think I'll use their power to defeat you. But that could be interpreted as Robotnik getting caught up in the moment of having a leg up on his archenemy Sonic. He's got a personal score to settle with the Blue Rodent. But Eggman Nega just met the guy like earlier today. He hasn't got nearly as much emotional or personal stakes in this situation. But the most interesting part of this is when Eggman Nega is about to say the powers will be and is cut off by Robotnik saying ours. Eggman Nega could have very easily slipped and said mine instead of ours, considering he isn't in a true partnership with Dr. Robotnik and is plotting his demise for when all of this is over. The fact that his sentence is cut off at the end is brilliant, and that it hints strongly to his true feelings for Dr. Robotnik, which will become clear later in the series. Then, in an attempt to save face with Robotnik, Nega says we can create our own dream world, only using we and our as a manipulative cover for Robotnik to push away whatever doubts he had obtained about Nega through the course of their time together. I love that he did that, because Robotnik is very, very smart, and any little detail could get him thinking of contingencies for any plausible situation that could arise. Eggman Nega, knowing that he and Dr. Robotnik are quite similar, used their similarities to his advantage and stamped down those possible contingencies Dr. Robotnik might have been cooking up as soon as Nega let that world domination comment slip unchecked earlier in the scene. That's multiple levels of crafty for both him and Dr. Robotnik. Then we move to the boss fight with one of the best battle songs ever, and the two evil twins are about to be defeated.
How was that?
Take this!
In this desperate situation, we get another distinct difference between Eggman Nega and Dr. Robotnik. Eggman Nega, dumbfounded that his small miscalculation has led to his entire plan being ruined, mumbles that it isn't over. His small miscalculation really shouldn't have mattered in the great scheme of things. It shouldn't have made a difference whether he had them or anyone else had them. The result should have been the same. The two conflicting energies tear the worlds apart and erase them totally from existence. That was supposed to happen. But for some reason, Sonic's control over chaos energy kept the two worlds from being destroyed long enough for Blaze to learn how to use the Soul Emeralds to achieve her super form and kick their butts. That shouldn't have happened, but it did. However, even this hasn't stopped Eggman Nega's drive and ambition. He was still ready and willing to work some strategy out to defeat the heroes, or at least get himself out of danger to live and scheme another day. Interesting again is the distinction he makes in saying, my incredibly profound plans. It was such a small miscalculation that I made. Just give me some time and I'll. All of the lines he speaks are about himself, not about both of them. He's a selfish villain. He's a lone wolf. He doesn't care about Dr. Robotnik. In fact, he doesn't think of them as partners or equals. The only reason he would ever say that they were would be to manipulate Robotnik into doing something that he wants. So in this moment of inevitable defeat, he's showing his true colors for once. And Dr. Robotnik interrupting him and telling him to stop babbling is funny and good writing. He thinks it's nothing but babbling, but he isn't picking up the subtext of his words, and he isn't trying to come up with any more plans himself. He can only focus on what is happening right now, a quality that most definitely contradicts Eggman Nega's character. Right now, Nega is reviewing what he did wrong and looking for options, a way out, something to give him the time he needs to further his goals. He's relentless. And that makes him an even better villain than I previously thought, considering what his goals are. It's frightening to see him stare defeat in the face and defy it to the bitter end, because destroying the world means that much to him. But why? Why does he wish to destroy the world so badly? How could that possibly be something that he wants? He'll die too. Unfortunately, we don't get the answers here, because Eggman Nega and Dr. Robotnik's egg salamander explodes in the dimensional rift called Exception, leaving the two portly scientists to float aimlessly in the void, never to return again. Hey, wait a sec!